Sunday evening, August 15th, 1971. Millions of Americans are sitting in front of their televisions. Suddenly, the broadcast is interrupted. President Richard Nixon. He speaks for 18 minutes. When he finishes, the global financial system that 44 countries spent 27 years building will come to an end. To understand why the system collapsed and why we still live in its shadow today, we have to rewind the tape 27 years from that moment. July 1944. World War II is raging. At the Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, 730 delegates gather. Europe lies in ruins. The Pacific is on fire. But here, far from the flames and rubble, they are designing the future world order. The idea was brilliant in its simplicity. $1 equals 1 troy ounce of gold. The United States pledges to freely exchange dollars for gold at that rate for foreign central banks, making the dollar, quote, as good as gold. For international trade stability, exchange rates could move within 1% of the fixed parity. Any change larger than 10% required IMF approval, preventing currency wars. All member currencies are pegged to the dollar, and through the dollar to gold, the world gets an anchor. J.P. Morgan once told the U.S. Congress in 1912, "Gold is money, everything else is credit." He said that 32 years before Bretton Woods and 59 years before Camp David. Today, the entire global financial order is built on credit, on a promise, on trust that the government tomorrow will behave the same as today. History says, not always. Why the dollar? Why not the pound or the franc? By the end of World War II, the United States was in an exceptionally strong position, while other economies were devastated. While other nations suffered massive losses, American industry and agriculture had actually expanded. The U.S. actively lent to its allies during and after the war, spreading the dollar's use in international settlements. By 1949, the U.S. held about 70% of the world's official gold reserves. That created the basis for trust in the dollar. To manage the new system, key institutions were created. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, to monitor compliance and lend to countries to defend their exchange rates. The World Bank, to finance post-war reconstruction and development. So what's the catch, you might ask? Inside this beautiful architecture, a flaw existed from the very beginning, a paradox. It was described by Belgian economist Robert Triffin in 1960. For the world to trade, it needs many dollars. For there to be many dollars, the United States must spend more than it earns, run a deficit. But the more dollars are printed, the less faith there is that the United States can exchange them back for gold. Imagine, you own a casino where chips can be redeemed for gold. To keep the game going and growing, you need to hand out a lot of chips. But if the chips in circulation become 10 times more than the gold in your vault, what happens when everyone comes to cash in at the same time? Correct. Collapse. In the 1960s, the United States was doing 3 things at once. Vietnam War, costing billions. Great Society, Medicare, pensions, highways, massive social spending, space race, spare no expense technology. 3 huge checks were being written on a single account. The printing press ran at full power. Money was being printed. From 1958 to 1971, U.S. gold reserves fell from $22.8 billion to $10.2 billion. Almost halved. in 13 years. The number of dollars grew, while America's gold stock rapidly shrank. Mistake of the century, or not? The first to sense trouble was Charles de Gaulle. In 1965, the French president called America's privilege to print the world's reserve currency exorbitant privilege. That phrase is still quoted in talks about a new world order. De Gaulle didn't just talk, he acted. France began sending dollars back to the US and demanding gold at the official rate of $35 per ounce. Other countries followed. By 1971, Britain demanded to convert $3 billion. Fort Knox was creaking at the seams. August 13, 1971, Nixon gathers 15 advisors at Camp David. Condition: no calls home, no leaks. 3 days of total secrecy from allies and the press. Why such secrecy? Couldn't they just warn their partners? On the evening of August 15th, Nixon goes on air. He says, "We are temporarily suspending the convertibility of the dollar into gold." The word temporarily, the biggest lie or the biggest misconception of the 20th century. Not a word about the depletion of reserves. The reason for secrecy is simple and logical. If word had leaked that the US would no longer exchange gold for dollars, everyone would rush to storm Fort Knox to cash in their dollars. A vague sense of doubt would force action. There simply wouldn't be enough gold for everyone. Some would be left with dollars that could no longer be redeemed for gold. That is a default. That is a crash. And that's why Sunday was the perfect day. Markets are closed, a holiday. So here's the first question. Why didn't markets crash the next day? Instead, they soared to the heavens. The Dow Jones posted a record gain. Economists gave a standing ovation. Everyone thought the president had saved the dollar. In reality, he simply pulled the trigger on a gun that had been loaded for decades. Applause turned to screams just 2 years later, when the first oil shock hit. And the link between that Sunday evening and the price at the gas pump is as straight as a rifle barrel. The paradoxical market rally, dubbed the Nixon rally, is explained by the fact that market participants didn't see the move as a sign of economic weakness or an inability to back dollars with gold. Instead, they saw a powerful set of stimuli for future corporate profit growth. Not a weak economy, but an opportunity for growth. Opportunities clouded their judgment. After a long period of uncertainty, Nixon's action was perceived not as panic, but as bold, decisive leadership, taking the bull by the horns. This psychological factor, the belief that the situation is under control, often plays a key role in the stock market. Cheap money. No longer needing to look over your shoulder at the gold reserve, you can print as much as needed to stimulate the economy, but this powerful short-term optimism soon collided with harsh reality. 1973, the Yom Kippur War. OPEC imposes an oil embargo, a ban on oil sales. Oil quadruples in price within a year. What does that have to do with Nixon and ending gold convertibility? That's politics and war. The link is direct. Oil worldwide is sold for dollars. Nixon closes the gold window. The dollar devalues. OPEC countries receive dollars, pieces of paper backed by nothing, that are becoming cheaper. To preserve their real income, they are forced to raise the price of oil in those very same depreciating paper notes. A logical step. Money gets cheaper, price goes up. If the dollar had remained tied to gold and remained hard, they wouldn't have had such a powerful argument for a fourfold price hike. The end of Bretton Woods unleashed commodity exporters, tightened the screws, and stoked inflation for the entire world. U.S. inflation soared to an unbelievable 14.8%. Money was turning into monopoly money. What to do? Remember the name Paul Volcker. More on him shortly. The same undersecretary who was at Camp David in 1971. America's allies understood very quickly. Japan's finance minister, Mikio Takeo, learned of the decision from TV news. Just like any ordinary citizen, Germany, Japan, France, their currencies automatically revalued. Their exports became more expensive. Their money became cheaper, without their consent, without negotiations. Treasury Secretary John Connally told European allies what became a famous phrase in diplomacy: "It's our dollar, but it's your problem." Attempts to fix things were made. In December 1971, the Smithsonian Agreement was signed, an attempt to salvage something. The dollar was devalued to $38 per ounce. It didn't help. By 1973, the Bretton Woods system officially ceased to exist. Floating exchange rates, every country for itself. Switzerland held out the longest. Its constitutional gold backing for the Swiss franc was only abolished in 1999 via referendum. It lasted 28 years after everyone else, and still surrendered. Now, Paul Adolf Volcker, his story is a remarkable example of how one man fundamentally changed the role of central banking and at an incredible price, restored trust in a national currency. In 1979, President Jimmy Carter appointed the 52-year-old Volcker as chairman of the Federal Reserve. Inflation was nearly 12% and rising. Contrary to the common practice of gradual rate hikes, Volcker went all in. In 1981, he authorized a sharp increase in the key interest rate to a record 22.4%. Credit became nearly impossible to get. Why raise rates to 22%? That's insane. Who would take out loans? That was precisely the point. Volcker understood trust in the dollar could only be restored through economic pain. He had to destroy demand for credit and literally burn the excess dollars out of the system. Stop inflation. This was a deliberate recession. His policy was called Volckerism, a crucial step. Volcker openly stated that Americans' living standards would have to temporarily decline to win the long-term battle. Volcker's policy triggered the deepest slump since the Great Depression. Unemployment exceeded 10%. Thousands of companies went bankrupt. Farmers blockaded the Federal Reserve building with tractors. Car dealers sent him keys to unsold vehicles. But after 2 years of harsh policy, inflation collapsed to 3 to 4%, and the country began an economic boom that lasted nearly 25 years. Paul Volcker's legacy is enormous. His actions forever changed how central banks operate, making inflation fighting their top priority. Was he right? Ask any economist today, and they'll say yes. After 2 years of pain, inflation crashed to 3%, and the longest economic boom in U.S. history began. He saved the dollar by destroying the illusion that a printing press can replace gold. 2022 to 2023, central banks around the world bought thousands of tons of gold, a record since Bretton Woods. China, Poland, Turkey, India. Do they know something we don't? They know history. They know that any system will eventually face a crisis of trust. When the dollar is used as a weapon of sanctions, as with Russia, countries start thinking, what if tomorrow we fall out of favor with the one who prints the world's main currency? Buying gold is a quiet preparation for a world where the rules of 1971 no longer apply. What backs money today, if not gold? The government's ability to collect taxes and the military power that enforces it. This is called fiat money. The system works as long as enough people believe in it at the same time. Bretton Woods worked as long as people believed in U.S. discipline. When that behavior changed, the system collapsed in months. No mechanism can save you from a loss of trust. That's the first lesson. But it's not just about one country. The system held because there was no alternative. A monopoly on the single anchor creates fragility. One issuer, one failure, global consequences. The BRICS countries in 2023 and 2024 discuss settlements in national currencies. For the first time since 1944, there is political will for an alternative. That's the second. And third, the most uncomfortable one. Triffin described the problem in 1960. The IMF discussed reforms in 1969. The decision was made in 1971, when it was already too late. Systemic risks are seen in advance. Action is taken when there's no choice left. That Sunday evening in 1971, Americans switched back to their regular shows. The president said temporarily, and they believed him. On the screen was a man with the power to rewrite the rules. It was never about gold. It was about trust. Tonight, the money in your pocket is still the same promise. And one final thing, the part that is rarely said. In that very speech, Nixon presented the suspension of convertibility as a defense of the dollar against foreign speculators. Not as a capitulation to France, not as an admission that there wasn't enough gold for everyone, not as the end of an era, as a victory. The greatest financial reform of the 20th century was sold to the public as a routine anti-crisis measure on a Sunday evening while everyone was watching TV. Mistake of the century or not? Mistake of the century or scam of the century? Knowing the entire mechanism, how it happened, what is it? First lesson, systems don't die when they are killed. They die when trust leaves them. Bretton Woods didn't collapse on August 15, 1971. It collapsed in Charles de Gaulle's mind when he realized there were more paper notes than gold. Faith that pieces of paper aren't just paper. Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, all the money in the world, they exist only as long as people believe in them, as long as people pay for them. Do you believe in them? Otherwise, collapse. Second lesson, temporary always becomes permanent. Nixon said temporarily suspend. 55 years have passed. The gold standard is still gone. All the world's money is a promise made that Sunday evening, and everyone believes. Is there an alternative? What happens if people stop believing? Otherwise, collapse. Third lesson, the one who pays is always the one not sitting at Camp David. Elites decide fate in silence, while the citizen pays through higher prices at the corner store and through taxes. If the people had decided, would they have made that choice? Any choice would have led to collapse. History is written by the winners. The view in textbooks is the one that serves them. Although the Bretton Woods system ceased to exist, it left a deep imprint. The dollar retained its dominant position and remains the world's primary reserve currency, despite formally abandoning gold backing. The IMF and World Bank, created back then, still operate and play a key role in the global economy, even though their architecture is often criticized as outdated and unfair to developing countries. The system showed that absolute long-term exchange rate stability is unattainable without resolving the fundamental contradictions of a global reserve currency. Hard pegged to gold, that lesson has already been learned. Trust lasts only until the first doubts. Resources, as long as there is demand. What are you willing to give your dollars, yuan, rubles, bitcoins for? Which pieces of paper do you believe in? And what guarantee do you have that someone won't change the rules of the game without you? Imagine you are in that room at Camp David. You see the gold draining away, and you know the system is doomed. What do? Do you pull the trigger like Nixon, or do you cling to gold until the last bar, knowing the crash will be even louder? Write in the comments, trigger or gold bar, and explain why.